In this video, we're going to cover 3 other loops, and then I'll set you up for your challenge in the next one. So the first loop that you need to be aware of is the for each loop, which is unique to C#, and it works really well with collections like arrays and lists. But because of that, because you don't know how to work with arrays or lists yet, we won't cover them yet. But I just want you to be aware of them because they're super useful. You see them all the time, but we'll cover those when we get into our arrays section. The next loop that you need to know is the do while loop, which you don't really use a lot. More often than not, we're using the for loop or the for each loop, but it's important for you to know about the do loop. It's a fun loop. So let's go ahead and hop into Unity, and I'm gonna go back to the all the loop script just so it's all kind of in one place. So this for loop, I'm gonna comment out, and I'll show you how a do loop looks. So a do loop is you type in the word do, and then you open up your curly brackets, and then underneath it, you put the word while, and then you open up parentheses and a semicolon. And basically what this is do run some code while some condition is met. So we could say, like, imagine, I don't know if you ever played a game like Crash Bandicoot or Mario or any of those games where you have a little character and there's like a box and you have to hit underneath the box and like stuff comes out of the box. And in Crash Bandicoot specifically, you can only hit the box a certain number of times before the box breaks. So we could use a do loop for something like that, where maybe we would create some sort of variable like a private integer for a box health, which equals 5. And we could say do box health minus minus as long as your box health is greater than 0, right? So like as long as you're hitting the box, the health will go down as long as there's still health on it, if that makes sense. And we could even do, just to like test this out, we could do like a debug.log jumping on box. And we should see that this prints out 5 times. And I'm going to make sure that my all the loops script is attached to a game object and hit play. All right, and jumping on box was printed out 5 times. Sweet. Now, what happens if our box health was set to 0 at the beginning? What if we already had 0? Would anything run, right, if box health was already 0? And the answer is actually yes. The do loop always runs at least once, and then it checks the condition in the while to see if it should run again. Now, let's talk really quickly about the danger of do while loops and the ways in which that it can crash Unity and freeze up your game if you don't use them correctly. The do while loop requires an incrementer or some kind of exit condition, or it's an infinite loop and it will eat up all of your processing power and crash your program. So let's say that I commented out this line of code, box health minus minus, so it's never going down. Now what we're saying is print out a message for as long as the health is greater than 0. The health is never going down, so this condition is always going to be met, which means it's going to be running infinitely as fast as your computer can process it and eat up all of the whole footprint of memory of your processing power and crash your game. So very, very, very important that if you're going to be using a do while loop or even a while loop, that you need to have an exit condition. The loop needs to have a way that it will end. So remember that when working with while loops. I'm going to comment that out. And if you feel like crashing your game, just make sure save everything first and then comment that out and run it again, and it will 100% crash Unity and you'll have to restart. Go for it. All right, the next loop that I'm going to teach you, the final loop of this section before we get into challenges, is just the plain old while loop. No do, just the while loop. But I'm going to comment this guy out so it's here and push it a little farther down and start. All right, so let's talk about the while loop. It's a simple loop and you'll see it a lot, especially when we get into the coroutine section. And the same as the do while loop, it does need an exit condition or it will turn into an infinite loop and crash your game. But the way you declare it is you write while, parentheses, and then curly brackets. And it's while whatever in here is true, some code will run in here. So let's say let's just declare an integer like int stamina, and let's set that equal to 10. And you could say while stamina is greater than 0, do some code like run a debug.log running or whatever it is, right? And if I just ran the code right now, because we don't have an exit loop, it would crash the computer because stamina is never going down. So you do need to have an incrementer stamina minus minus, right? And so this running message would print out 10 times. The while loop then would exit all the way down here and we would get a debug.log loop has ended. And if we save our script and test this out, it should print out 10 times. All right, and there we have in our console, running was printed out 10 times and the loop has ended was printed out once. So that is while loops. Okay, so we've covered for loops, do while loops, and briefly mentioned for each loops that we'll get into later. But that concludes this video. In the next one, we're gonna get set up for a challenge where you will get to determine what kind of loop would work best for this challenge. Okay, see you in the next one.